Could something big have happened in the evil sky divine range? He glanced at Wei Yi and found that Wei Yi didn't dare to look at him. Instead, he maintained a calm and composed posture, as if he was lost in thought. Are we leaving now? Zhou Xuanji asked. He also wanted to go out and become more powerful. He was not very satisfied with the speed of his cultivation just by relying on cultivation. Let's do it this year. Choose a time and go find Wei Yi. He'll help you change your aura and hide your identity. Beast Sovereign muttered to himself. He didn't want to force him too much. Zhou Xuanji nodded. Afterward, Beast Sovereign began to talk about the recent situation of the Kunlun Origin Court. It was nothing more than the battle between the various divine ranges and the misfortune brought by the Holy Ghost. That guy had been hiding outside the Kunlun Origin Court, constantly absorbing the luck of the living beings, invisibly creating a massacre. Is there really no way to punish the Holy Ghost? Zhou Xuanji asked with a frown. The Holy Ghost was indeed an extremely unsettling factor. The sooner it was eliminated, the safer he would feel. He didn't want the Holy Ghost to break into the Kunlun Origin Court after he left. As soon as Beast Sovereign heard the words Holy Ghost, he couldn't help but frown. Origin Court War God's expression also changed. Let's ignore it for now. No one can do anything to it except the Sovereign. But it won't slaughter unscrupulously. When it is full, it will naturally leave, Beast Sovereign said, shaking his head. Beast Sovereign shook his head. This was the first time he was helpless against an existence and could only let it go. Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes and didn't say much. After chatting for a while, Zhou Xuanji left with his son. The reason why he brought Zhou Tanhua here today was obviously to become Origin Court War God's disciple. On the way back, Zhou Tanhua was very excited. He kept asking Origin Court War God about it. Zhou Xuanji didn't belittle Origin Court War God. After all, Origin Court War God was really strong. He was absolutely qualified to become Zhou Tanhua's master. On the other side, Beast Sovereign looked at Wei Yi and asked in a deep voice, when will the Mortal Divine Range's 10 Death Sect move? Wei Yi sighed and replied, the 10 Death Sect is unfathomable. Our intelligence personnel can't grasp their movements. Beast Sovereign's face turned even gloomier when he heard this. The Mortal Divine Range was now the #1 enemy of the Evil Sky Divine Range. Whether it was the number or the division of combat power, the Mortal Divine Range crushed the Evil Sky Divine Range. During this period of time, Beast Sovereign was under a lot of pressure. I can go and deal with the 10 Death Sect. After all, you offended them because of me, Origin Court War God said. When he mentioned the 10 Death Sect, his expression wasn't as ugly as Beast Sovereign and Wei Yi's. Beast Sovereign looked up at him and said, okay, but be careful. Don't fall into their trap. Do you remember the future I told you before? Origin Court War God furrowed his brow and slowly nodded. He didn't like this feeling. Although he was very grateful for Beast Sovereign's kindness, this feeling was too heavy. It made him feel uncomfortable and had no sense of freedom. Origin Court War God turned around and left. Soon, only Beast Sovereign and Wei Yi were left in the hall. Wei Yi said, Sovereign, the situation is getting more and more serious. The divine ranges that are cooperating with us have ulterior motives. We have already taken the lead. Next, we should hide our edge and let the other divine ranges take the lead. Beast Sovereign nodded. The corner of his mouth rose as he said with a smile, someone will be more anxious than us. Pure Sword Heaven. Zhou Xuanji took Zhou Tanhua to Xian Xianghua and Jiang Shui. He told them about the arrangements a year later and also informed Xian Xianghua about Zhou Tanhua's apprenticeship. Xian Xianghua curled her lips and said, it seems that this Beast Sovereign really loves Origin Court War God deeply. He is willing to let you establish a relationship with Origin Court War God. If Zhou Xuanji soared, Origin Court War God would naturally benefit from it. Jiang Shui nodded. Especially after hearing about Zhou Fei's prophecy, they were very disgusted with Beast Sovereign's action. However, they couldn't refuse. After all, Zhou Xuanji had received a lot of care from Beast Sovereign. We'll see when the time comes. There are still more than 10 years before he reaches adulthood. Zhou Xuanji rubbed Zhou Tanhua's hair and said with a smile. The two women nodded. Then they sat down at the table and started talking about the Kunlun Origin Court. Zhou Tanhua was bored and slipped out to play. His body was tough. He wouldn't fall to his death, and no one would plot against him in Pure Sword Heaven. Therefore, Zhou Xuanji and the other two were not worried about him running around. They chatted for a while. Zhou Xuanji turned around suddenly, and a brilliant violet radiance shot out from his eyes. Myriad Worlds Piercer. He caught the Holy Ghost at a glance. This guy actually followed a group of creatures and flew into the Kunlun Origin Court. This scene made Zhou Xuanji's expression change drastically. Once the Holy Ghost came in, the Kunlun origin court would definitely be in chaos. Just as he was about to get up and look for Beast Sovereign's voice resounded throughout the Evil Sky Divine Range. From today onwards, no one is allowed to leave the Evil Sky Divine Range. Those who have gone out must come back quickly. Whoever dares to go out will be killed. Before they could even react, they died one after another. They died in different ways and all of them died in extreme pain. However, this scene did not attract the attention of the Void Boundary Palace. Not a single Origin City's guard team came to check on the situation. Everything seemed very calm, terrifyingly calm. Only several dozen corpses remained floating in the Kunlun universe. Zhou Xuanji witnessed this scene from Pure Sword Heaven. He could clearly see the Holy Ghost's greedy expression. This fellow wandered around as if it was sniffing something. He was seizing destiny. Soon he flew toward the nearest godly vein. He turned into a blur and barged into it. Zhou Xuanji sighed. He understood that a catastrophe was about to befall a divine range. He didn't continue watching. He was helpless and could only wait for time to pass. He got up and walked to the cultivation palace outside the attic. This palace was actually a stove. The walls and floor were inlaid with all kinds of rare treasures. All of them were treasures that could help with cultivation. Once someone stepped into it, their body would be tempered by the violent Tao energy. This palace had been built for nearly 100 years. It was personally supervised by Chang Xian. It was only recently completed. Except for Zhou Xuanji, no one else could enter at will. Apart from their identity, it was also because it was too dangerous. The Tao energy here was based on the 9 vast heavens. If an ordinary Tao ancestor stepped into it, they would be directly crushed into ashes. Zhou Xuanji had the exterminating divine eyes and the soul source orb. He wasn't afraid at all. But others couldn't. As soon as he stepped into the cultivation palace, violent Tao energy surged from all directions, trying to annihilate his soul and body. His glabella suddenly opened as the soul source orb appeared, crazily absorbing the surrounding Tao energy and transforming it into his body. Soon, his eyes began to absorb the Tao energy, helping him digest it. He slowly walked to the center of the palace and sat down cross-legged. He began cultivating in seclusion. Inside the sovereign palace, Beast Sovereign sat on the main seat. Hundreds of figures were standing in the palace. The atmosphere was silent. No one spoke. The appearance of the Holy Ghost made all the divine ranges stop the war. But it also brought endless panic to all the divine ranges. Origin Court War God stood in the first row. He was also frowning, thinking about countermeasures. Beast Sovereign asked, "Is there any news from the other divine ranges? What's the attitude of the sovereign divine ranges?" An old man raised his hand and said, "The mortal divine range reprimanded us for breaking the Holy Ghost seal. They don't want to care about this anymore. The Chani divine range is organizing a sealing team. But they need to gather the resources for the array. It's not a matter of a month or two." His expression was bitter. He also felt that Beast Sovereign was at fault, but he didn't dare to speak out. If it wasn't for Origin Court War God, why would Beast Sovereign send Zhou Xuanji to destroy that universe? The rulers of the Evil Sky Divine Range didn't have a good impression of Origin Court War God. On the contrary, Origin Court War God was impartial. He had captured many creatures of the Evil Sky Divine Range, causing many creatures in the Evil Sky Divine Range to complain about him. The Holy Ghost can travel through time and space. The Great Tao Wall of the Evil Sky Divine Range is nothing to him. If he is about to approach the Evil Sky Divine Range, this sovereign needs a group of people to lure him away from the Evil Sky Divine Range. Each of you select a group of people. The number of people on each side is the same, Beast Sovereign said in a deep voice. As soon as he said this, the sovereign palace exploded. All the rulers were excited. Isn't this courting death? Sovereign, this is not a good thing. The Evil Sky Divine Range has never done such an outrageous thing since ancient times. You should let your people lure the Holy Ghost. Yes, we didn't cause this. The rulers who could come here belonged to the ancestors of the Evil Sky Divine Range. Many of them had watched Beast Sovereign grow up. Before, they didn't dare to put on airs because of Beast Sovereign's majesty. But now they were all angry. You caused trouble and you want our descendants to pay for it? Wei was calm and composed. He didn't speak as if he was in another world. Origin Court War God was expressionless. He also didn't speak. Beast Sovereign didn't get angry immediately. Instead, he looked at them quietly. After everyone had vented, the hall fell silent again. Beast Sovereign sighed. This sovereign is indeed at fault, but I hope you can think about the past. It's not that this sovereign is unwilling to sacrifice my people, but because it was this sovereign's people who were sacrificed every time. You can't just enjoy the protection of the evil sky divine range. You also have to pay. Do you understand? Beast Sovereign slowly said as he stood up. An incomparably overbearing pressure made everyone feel suffocated. Chapter 748. In the face of Beast Sovereign's strong oppression, no one dared to say anything. It was easy to say. As elders of the evil sky divine range, who hadn't contributed to the evil sky divine range, Origin Court War God said, "Let me lure the Holy Ghost. Think about whether there is any other way to protect the evil sky divine range." As soon as he said this, everyone turned to look at him. Beast Sovereign frowned and said, "No, you are a great force of the evil sky divine range. You will have to fight for us in the future." The leaders frowned when they heard this. Bullshit. Too hypocritical. They didn't dare to lose their temper with Beast Sovereign. They could only look at Origin Court War God and threaten him with their eyes. Origin Court War God turned a blind eye and calmly said, "I am the best candidate. It's settled. Otherwise I will leave the evil sky divine range immediately. No one among you can stop me." Beast Sovereign was silent. In the end he nodded. He had no reason to refuse. If he continued to be stubborn he would be really unreasonable. Then he began to discuss how to protect the evil sky divine range. The evil sky divine range had many arrays, but it was too difficult to stop the Holy Ghost. The Holy Ghost was beyond the definition of the universe. It was not bound by any rules. The only thing it was afraid of was the Kunlun Origin Court. Now that it could even freely travel through the Kunlun Origin Court, who could stop it? Why not ask the sovereign to take action? Someone suddenly asked. He had a strange look on his face as if he wasn't sure of something. At this point they were well aware of the situation. A long time ago there were rumors that the sovereign was no longer around. Now that the Kunlun Origin Court was in such turmoil, the sovereign had yet to appear. It seemed that the rumors were true. Beast Sovereign looked at the man with a faint look in his eyes and said, "Can't you guess it?" The man was silent. His eyes were filled with despair. Every super divine range aimed for the sovereign's position. But when it came to a crisis they would rely on the sovereign. Because the sovereign represented the strongest in the Kunlun Origin Court. The sovereign was not here and the Holy Ghost was attacking. At this moment, everyone's heart palpitated. Would the Kunlun Origin Court be destroyed because of this? They didn't dare to think about it and tried not to believe it. Pure Sword Heaven, Cultivation Palace. Zhou Xuanji sat cross-legged as he cultivated. The soul source orb between his eyebrows radiated a brilliant light, illuminating the entire cultivation palace. He was breaking through to the 13 Flowers Tao Ancestor Realm. The 36 flowers in the Tao Ancestor Realm represented a different understanding and attainment of one's own great way. Opening one more flower required countless years of hard work. He wanted to become stronger through fighting. How many people from the evil sky divine range are vying for the position of supremacy, and how long will it take? Asked Zhou Xuanji. He had noticed Beast Sovereign's words. He had to report his name. Zhou. Oh. No matter where one was, there were all kinds of rankings and the rankings were always stimulating. There are about 7,000 of them, and even the weakest among them is at the 9 vast heavens realm. The duration of the competition isn't fixed and they keep fighting. Sooner or later, one of them will stand out and make everyone believe that he is the supreme being. Beast Sovereign said with a smile, making Zhou Xuanji a little speechless. Sovereign of Z. This was just the evil sky divine range, yet there were already so many people. How much would all the divine ranges add up? Zhou of Divine Zhou. Sect Sovereign. By Zhou felt by the thought. Zhou. Tian Zhou. King Tianjing Sovereign. Of Zhou felt the. Just the Tian. Zhou Tian Zhou. Zhou. Sunday him. But. Su Zhou. Zhou Sovereign. Beast Sovereign continued to tell him about the competition for the sovereign's position. For example, don't kill if you can. If you encounter a life-threatening crisis, don't worry about your opponent's divine range. Sovereign needed universal love, but he also needed to be domineering and majestic. After talking for half an hour, Beast Sovereign finally let him go back. After returning to Pure Sword Heaven, Zhou Xuanji told his wife and daughter that he was going to compete for the sovereign's position. Wow. Father, are you going to become the sovereign? Zhou Shaoxian asked excitedly. While speaking, she pinched Zhou Tanhua's face. Zhou Tanhua pouted. He wanted to break free from her embrace but his sister was too strong. He couldn't resist her. Jiang Shui rolled her eyes at her and said, It's just a participant. It's not that easy to become the sovereign. Zhou Shaoxin shrugged and said with a smile, since you can compete for the sovereign's position, does it mean that the Holy Ghost has been suppressed? Otherwise, how can Father go out and compete? Xian Xianghua couldn't help but burst into laughter, puzzling Zhou Shaoxian. Then Xian Xianghua told the truth. Zhou Xiaoxuan's eyes widened in disbelief. She really admired and believed in her father, but what kind of existence was the Holy Ghost? The existence that made the Kunlun origin court panic was subdued by Zhou Xuanji just like that? The more she thought about it, the more incredulous she felt. Zhou Tanhua also looked at his father curiously. Although he was young, he also understood that the Holy Ghost was a terrifying existence. Even his future master, origin court war god, couldn't defeat it. Sure enough, his father was the most powerful. Zhou Tanhua looked at Zhou Xuanji with admiration in his eyes as if he was looking at a great hero. Is there a threshold for the registration for the sovereign's position? Chapter 758. The god range we are going to deal with is called the innocent god range. Its strength can only be considered average. They are rich in sword heart grass, which can strengthen the sword Dao. You are also a sword cultivator, how can you miss it? Young Heavenly Lord drank a cup of wine and said with a smile. He did not force Zhou Xuanji but waited patiently. Zhou Xuanji did not agree immediately but fell into deep thought. The sword heart grass could strengthen his sword Dao. To him it was indeed a good thing. However, he had his own principles. Bullying a divine range without any grievances or hatred made him feel somewhat ashamed. The mortal divine range was still manageable. After all, they had enmity with the evil sky divine range and were stronger than the evil sky divine range. After a while, Zhou Xuanji slowly said, "Forget it, thank you for your kind intentions." Hearing that, young Heavenly Lord's eyes turned cold. Zhou Xuanji's expression did not change. He was prepared to fight at any moment. Very few people dare to reject me. You are the first one with a cultivation weaker than mine. Young Heaven Lord smiled, but his smile was very cold. Zhou Xuanji looked at him fearlessly. Their eyes met, competing with each other. Zhou Xuanji, will you become the biggest obstacle on my path to the sovereign? Young Heavenly Lord continued to ask. His cold expression instantly disappeared and was replaced by a meaningful smile. Zhou Xuanji replied, I really hope that I can become one, but I don't have the power for now. Young Heavenly Lord couldn't help but laugh when he heard that. He stood up and looked down at Zhou Xuanji as he said, You have great talent and many fortuitous encounters. I hope you have the strength to fight with me. As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared on the spot. Zhou Xuanji did not leave immediately but continued to drink in the guest room. He was thinking about his future path. If he really wanted to fight for the position of supremacy, his current cultivation speed was not enough. The young Heavenly Lord's strength had already surpassed the ranks of geniuses. He was a true powerhouse of the Kunlun origin court. If Zhou Xuanji wanted to become the sovereign, he had to be at least as strong as the young Heavenly Lord. After returning to Pure Sword Heaven, Zhou Xuanji went straight to the cultivation palace. He sat down cross-legged and took out the Lesser Supreme Sword. Do you know anything about the Tianyi Divine Range? Zhou Xuanji asked. Little Sovereign stretched his waist and yawned. Tianyi Divine Range? Isn't that my disciple's divine vein? That's the supreme martial artist that I mentioned before, the one who doesn't have enough strength but is unparalleled in benevolence and righteousness. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. Doesn't this mean that Little Sovereign is related to the Tianyi Divine Range? Little Sovereign sneered and said, What? Did the Tianyi Divine Range bully you? Zhou Xuanji was silent. This brat was really shameless to be able to guess it. Although the young Heavenly Lord did not make things difficult for him, the Tianyi Divine Range pursued him relentlessly. As long as he did not hand over the Holy Ghost, Nanmu Tianyi would not give up. Cultivate well. When you become strong, no one will bully you. Little Sovereign smiled contemptuously. He was as annoying as ever. Following this, he began to preach the Tao and help Zhou Xuanji cultivate. The days became dull again. The appearance of old demon Soul Mover caused a lot of commotion in the Kunlun origin court, but he helped the young Heavenly Lord become stronger. Since then, the young Heavenly Lord had completely shown his brilliance. He became the most dazzling existence on the sovereign ranking. Void Boundary Palace. Old demon Soul Mover stood behind Zhou Fa, facing the vast void outside the tower. His face was filled with shame and anger. He wanted to say something but hesitated. Losing to the young Heavenly Lord was a huge blow to him, but he couldn't find an excuse. That sword was really too strong. Don't let your imagination run wild. That sword is the holy judgment sword of the Tianyi divine range. Evil demons like you are the bane of it, Zhou Fa said in a slightly mocking tone, making Old Demon Soul Mover feel even more uncomfortable. Old Demon Soul Mover asked in a muffled voice, "What should we do next?" He lost to the young Heavenly Lord in the first battle. How could he compete for the sovereign's position? Apart from the young Heavenly Lord, there are very few people who can beat you in the sovereign treasures. However, there are also many people who are still hiding and haven't made a move. The dark period has just begun. In the future I see the young Heavenly Lord is just cannon fodder, a stepping stone for the sovereign to rule the world, Zhou Fa calmly said, looking into the distance. Old Demon Soul Mover gnashed his teeth and asked, "What is the future you see?" He often suspected that this kid was fooling him. The future is always changing. Is it fun? As I said, the real sovereign hasn't appeared yet. We must rise before he appears. When I help you capture Daohu, you can become stronger. At that time, defeating the young Heavenly Lord will be a piece of cake. Zhou Fa turned to look at Old Demon Soul Mover and smiled meaningfully. He raised his right hand and waved. A gigantic creature appeared in the depths of the void. It was a dragon head with a pitch-black body and 4 dragon horns. The dragon's eyes were wide open with a pair of golden pupils that flickered with killing intent. Old Demon Soul Mover frowned and asked, "Why do you always like to play with fire? First it was the Holy Ghost and now it's this guy. Aren't you afraid of digging your own grave?" He suddenly couldn't understand Zhou Fa. He was also Zhou Fa's risky move. Zhou Fa smiled and said, "Dragon Emperor Yungu is full of anger. Otherwise, it wouldn't be of much help to my cultivation." The previous battle was witnessed by many creatures. News of Zhou Xuanji's strength spread out once again. Except for the battle between high-level divine ranges, most creatures were paying attention to the competition of the sovereign list. Every move of a genius like Zhou Xuanji was being watched. Next, he didn't encounter any more challenges. He smoothly arrived near the innocent divine range. Looking from a distance, the innocent divine range was in tatters. Countless gravel was floating around. It was obvious that a great battle had taken place. Zhou Xuanji stood on the Triphoenix Qilin carriage's pedal, scanning the innocent divine range. He found that there were no creatures coming and going in the nearby universe. It seemed very dead. It seemed that there was no hope of picking up the sword Heartgrass. Strange, why are no creatures here? Zhou Xuanji fell into deep thought. Both sides were either injured or had fled. This area should be safe. Zhou Xuanji swept his divine will, covering this universe. The divine range in the distance seemed to be in a different universe from the origin city. It was completely different from the innocent divine range. At this moment, his divine will suddenly captured a trace of aura. It was very hidden on the other side of the universe. Zhou Xuanji immediately stretched out his hand and grabbed it. The next moment, the space distorted and a figure flew out. It was a bald girl in red. She had a pretty face and a terrified look on her face. She seemed to be only 15 or 16 years old. "Little nun?" Zhou Xuanji furrowed his brow. Just when he was about to ask, a black spatial crack appeared behind the girl in red. A big hand grabbed her body and pulled her in. Everything happened too fast. Even if Zhou Xuanji wanted to stop it, it was too late. The spatial crack also disappeared. Zhou Xuanji was puzzled. Who was that just now? Mortal God, she was taken away. The person who took her is probably a powerful expert from a sovereign divine range, Wei Yi's voice came. Wei Yi's voice rang out as he flew over from the east. It's this guy again. Zhou Xuanji narrowed his eyes. Why do I feel that Wei Yi is following me? He curiously asked, what's a mortal god? Could it be related to mortal qi?